What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I reviewed the original REL HT 1205 about 3 years ago. And in that video, what I told you guys was like, hey, I know this is REL's theater lineup, but don't sleep on this. It's incredible for music. And ever since then, you guys have all asked me about the Predator and how that performs. I never got my hands on one until recently, and it's the new one. It's the 1510. I didn't even know they were working on this. I originally reached out to them and I was like, hey, can I get like a S510 review sample? And they were like, no, we're gonna send you something bigger. And this bad boy showed up. So let's talk about it. We'll do this review the same way we generally do. I'll throw the main specs on screen. I'll tell you about the ones that stand out to me. I'll tell you what it sounds like. I'll tell you how it is with music, because that's really what I focus on. I really care about subwoofers performance for 2-channel music, because when we look at something like this 15-inch driver, 1000 watts RMS, we already know it can play loud. We already know it can extend low. I want to know if it can do it with good sound quality, good finesse, good handling of delicate passages, good nuanced detail and things like that, right? So let's jump into those standout features. Obviously, this beautiful carbon fiber driver looks absolutely amazing. We also have carbon fiber strips along the sides of the footers. This subwoofer looks equally good whether it has the grill on or off. It's been totally reworked to look more like the TX range. So this side piece is now curved, where before it was a 90-degree angle, and the grill sits just off the front baffle a little bit, much like the T9X, and has those same beveled edges. I love the look. So if you're one of those people that has to rock a grill, no worries, looks amazing. If you're more like me and you prefer to leave it off, that beautiful carbon fiber is gonna smile at you every time you look at it. We have a nice gloss piece on the top that is painted, gloss black obviously, as well as a gray REL logo that is very subtle up top that I like very much. That rounds out the standout features for me. Some home theater enthusiasts may be happy to know this bad boy does have XLR, and there are mounting holes on the back to stack these if you want to run an array of 2 or 3 or more if you want to. So how does it sound? So I paired this bad boy with a ton of speakers, guys, and I found that it paired well with anything I threw at it, which was awesome. Not all subwoofers do, especially larger models. Larger models can be very challenging. I use the Focal Aria 906, I use the Dynaudio Special 40, I use the Bucard S400 Mark II, and the $8,000 repair Focal Canta #1, and we'll talk about those all in just a second. Let me start with the lowest frequencies. This is one of the things that stood out to me almost immediately. The subwoofer had a ton of output in the lower frequencies. I like to run my subs hotter than what would be considered accurate. It's just how I like to enjoy my music. I don't necessarily care for the most accurate bass. I like a little bit extra, especially in those lower frequencies, say between 25 and 40 hertz. So when you run a subwoofer hot, you're gonna notice a few things, and well, if it has issues, you'll notice a few things. Most of the times, like bigger subwoofers especially, they don't have the best mid-bass region, and when you run them hot, it tends to muck up the mid-range. This did not do that even the slightest. I was able to run this plenty hot, way hotter than my taste even is, and it never, ever caused any issues with the mid-range. I actually had a lot of fun with this thing, guys. My home is fairly new. It was built in 2017, and there's 3 windows behind me where I sit, and this was shaking all 3 of them. And like, I've never been like, oh, maybe I should like upgrade my windows because I have a new home, but like now it kind of bothers me, and like it's one of those things like once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. Anyhow, enough about my stupid windows. The subwoofer handles mid-bass transitions very well, very impressive for a subwoofer of its size. Is it gonna have the finesse of the T9X in those higher mid-bass frequencies? No, no 15-inch subwoofer does, guys. But the finesse it does have is very impressive for a 15-inch subwoofer. So, texture was very good. Note-to-note distinction was very good. Transient response, speed, start-stop behavior, all impeccable, guys. I've reviewed a ton of REL subwoofers, and every time I've said something like, you know, any metric you want to use to describe bass or sound quality, this guy has it. If sound quality is a concern when buying a subwoofer, REL is a great brand to consider. They're absolutely obsessed with it, and they do a great job giving you a subwoofer that can deliver proper bass with great sound quality, great integration, and so on. So I don't want to spend too much time there. Instead, I want to tell you a few of the pairings I did and why I did them, just try to help you understand my methodology. So first I pulled out the Focal Aria 906. The drivers on the Aria 906 are very, very lightweight, so most larger subwoofers are going to have a hard time blending if their moving mass is heavy, or if they don't have the best start-stop behavior, or if they don't have the best transient response, and so on. The REL Predator 1510 blended with the Focal Aria 906, no problem. Another thing I use the Aria 906 for is they don't have the most bass, so the subwoofer is doing most of the work in the bass region. So if a subwoofer has any issues with integration, the Aria 906 will show me that. And again, I didn't have any issues with integration there. Now, let me tell you about how this is a little bit different compared to something like the REL T9X, because I just want to make things clear. The REL T9X being like a 10-inch subwoofer, you know how I said earlier it's going to have a little bit better of a mid-bass region, but this mid-bass region is still phenomenal for a 15. It's going to be the same with things like integration, handling of nuance, details, and things like that. If you want the ultimate in sound quality, the T9X is just going to deliver it in a way that is going to be just a little bit more nuanced detail, a little bit more finesse, and so on. You can't expect a 15 to do what a 10 does, just like you cannot expect a 10 to do what a 15 does. Are you with me? So when I'm talking about all this sound quality stuff, I'm talking about it's impressive for a 15 to be doing this, all while still being able to rattle my windows with a ton of extension and a ton of SPL. I really, really enjoyed listening to music with this subwoofer. If you've got a mixed system, a theater dominant system, if you're an audiophile only, I think the subwoofer can be at home with any of those kinds of setups. The only time I wouldn't recommend the Predator 1510 is if you want a small subwoofer. I wouldn't recommend the Predator 1510. Or if, like, say you have a really small room and you listen at really low volumes, I wouldn't recommend the Predator 1510 because you just wouldn't be using very much of it. You know, it's better to, at that point, maybe get a pair of T5Xs, right? So let me tell you what makes REL special real quick. I know I'm all over the place, but I've just reviewed so many REL subwoofers. I don't want to tell you all the same things I do every time, right? So a lot of people think it's that high-level cable, and that high-level cable is great, don't get me wrong, but it's not what makes a REL a REL. If it was, this would have it, and this doesn't. So what I think makes a REL subwoofer amazing are a few things. One, they're incredibly obsessive about keeping that moving mass as lightweight as possible. Two, they don't use any DSP. And I have come to believe the best subwoofers in the world don't use a DSP. I know that's like a heavy statement there, but it's just my opinion. And that's not to say DSPs are terrible. Some subwoofers need a DSP. Their design requires it. Something like the tiny KEF KC62 that's so small it absolutely needs a DSP to, you know, have the bass it has. But something larger like this, if you're using a DSP, it's generally going to be to fix problems in either the mid-bass region or the lowest frequencies below the driver's resonant frequency. REL doesn't have a DSP in this thing to fix those problems, so they just have to engineer it properly, and I appreciate that. I believe engineering it properly instead of letting DSP fix those things, and I'm not saying DSP is the wrong way to do it or that's improper. Some people may have the total opposite belief and believe DSP is better. Hey, good on you. I don't know if most people have heard as many subwoofers as I have, but I digress. Not having a DSP, in my opinion, what it does, and I've experienced this with a few subwoofers that don't use a DSP. The lower frequency is going to have more of a sense of control because it's not being boosted to high hell. When companies use a DSP, sometimes they're boosting that 20 hertz region, like 15, 10 decibels. That's quite a bit of boost on the driver. Drivers don't like to play below their resonant frequency. Instead, we have a subwoofer package that is engineered properly to play well together. The driver is engineered well, the cabinet is engineered well, and they're designed to play well together. So you tell me, you know, would you rather have a DSP fix everything, or would you rather have an engineer design the unit to be, you know, a cohesive unit that plays well together? Anyway, yeah, I digress. Sorry, I'm not a DSP hater, guys. It's just my experience. You know, I've listened to a ton of subs, and I don't hate DSP subs. Like I said, some of them are quite good. It's like DAC chips, you know what I mean? Like good execution of a DAC chip, like, is really important, right? It's not just the chip, and it's the same with DSP. Good implementation of a DSP isn't as bad as what I described. But some engineers get lazy and use a DSP to just like fix all their lazy mistakes. And for that reason, I don't like DSP. So knowing this doesn't have it, it just has to be engineered well. All right, enough of the DSP rant. I go on rants sometimes. The things I rant about the most are like usually aesthetics, but I love the look of this, so I don't have an aesthetic rant. I had to rant about something, right, or it wouldn't be Nemo propaganda. Back to the subwoofer. So I told you why I use the Focal Aria 906. I pulled out the Bucard S400 Mark II because they have a ton of bass of their own, and when a speaker has a ton of bass of its own, it's a good way to show if the subwoofer has any integration or phase issues, because the speaker's making a ton of bass of its own. The subwoofer's making a ton of bass of its own. You should be able to get them phase aligned so that they're enhancing each other instead of canceling each other out. Didn't have any problems with the S400 Mark II and the REL Predator 1510. Same with the Dynaudio Special 40. That's another bass heavy speaker. It paired just fine with the REL Predator 1510. And then just to be extra sure that the sound quality of the 1510 was just on par, I pulled out the Focal Canta No. 1s. Those are $8,000 a pair. If a subwoofer has any issues with integration, sound quality, transient response, nuance detail, and so on, it will show when using $8,000 a pair speakers. Again, the 1510 had no issues whatsoever. It was actually one of the better pairings. I really enjoyed my time. In fact, it's quite late right now and I should be sleeping. And the reason this review took me so long to do today is because I sat down to just get some final impressions. I had the Canta No. 1 set up with the Predator 1510. And instead of listening for, like, I had initially planned to listen for like, maybe 20, 30 minutes. I listened for 2.5 hours instead. And now it's 1 a.m. on a Sunday and I've got to wrap this video up. So, is this bad boy good for music? Yes, absolutely. It is phenomenal with music. If you have a mixed system, if you have a stereo, only a dedicated theater, it doesn't matter. This subwoofer can do all of it. Yeah, I think I've told you everything I want to tell you about the subwoofer, guys. It's phenomenal. It's incredible. This channel does have a Discord. If you like what you see here and you have more questions, you can ask in the YouTube comments, but I prefer you ask in the Discord. It's just a lot easier for me to manage. If you do join the Discord, it is free. Please be courteous. It is not a place to flex your ego, tell people they're stupid and things like that. It's not a forum, basically, right? We're like friendly with each other. So be friendly or don't join maybe, right? Yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you for tuning in again. Yeah, that wraps this video up. Until next time, later.